A processor is defined under the GDPR as any natural or legal person, public authority, agency, or other body which processes personal data on behalf of the controller. The fundamental characteristic that defines a processor is its service to the controller, processing data according to the controller's instructions and not for its own purposes. The guidelines emphasize that the processor's role is supportive, ensuring that data processing on behalf of the controller complies with the GDPR's requirements. Key obligations of processors. The GDPR sets forth specific obligations for processors to ensure the protection and lawful processing of personal data. Processing instructions. Processors must process data exclusively based on documented instructions from the controller, including transfers of personal data to a third country or an international organization, unless required to do so by EU or member state law. Confidentiality. Processors are required to ensure that persons authorized to process the personal data have committed themselves to confidentiality or are under an appropriate statutory obligation of confidentiality. Security measures. Implementing appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk is mandatory for processors, in line with Article 32 of the GDPR. Sub-processing. Any engagement of a sub-processor must be based on a prior specific or general written authorization by the controller, with the same data protection obligations as set out in the contract or other legal act between the controller and the processor. Data subject rights. Processors must assist controllers in fulfilling their obligations to respond to requests for exercising the data subject's rights under the GDPR. Data breaches. Processors are required to notify controllers without undue delay after becoming aware of a personal data breach. Data protection impact assessments, DPIAs. Processors should assist controllers in performing DPIAs and consulting with supervisory authorities, where necessary. Termination of services. Upon the termination of data processing services, the processor must delete or return all personal data to the controller, and delete existing copies unless EU or member state law requires storage of the personal data. The processor-controller relationship. The relationship between the processor and the controller is foundational to GDPR compliance, necessitating a contract or other legal act under EU or member state law that binds the processor to the controller. This contract must explicitly stipulate the processing instructions, including the subject matter and duration of the processing, the nature and purpose of the processing, the type of personal data, and the categories of data subjects. Conclusion. The role of the processor is integral to the GDPR's protective framework, requiring strict adherence to the controller's instructions and compliance with legal obligations to ensure the rights and freedoms of data subjects are protected. By clarifying the obligations of processors, the EDPB's guidelines aim to facilitate compliance, promote accountability, and ensure that processors understand their critical role in the data processing ecosystem. Processors are encouraged to carefully assess their procedures and contracts in light of these guidelines to ensure full compliance with the GDPR.